Well, this news is breaking now. The Trump administration is going on the offense over sanctuary cities. And we go outnumbered overtime. I'm Harris Faulkner. The Trump Justice Department is suing to block California laws which extend protections to those in the United States illegally. The most aggressive move yet in its push to force so-called sanctuary cities and states to cooperate with immigration authorities. The lawsuit triggering furious denunciations from California's Attorney General and its Democratic Governor Jerry Brown. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, in announcing the details of the lawsuit, said California's actions violate the Constitution and endanger public safety.
California, we have a problem. A series of actions and events has occurred here that directly and adversely impact the work of our federal officers. For example, the mayor of Oakland has been actively seeking to help illegal aliens avoid apprehension by ICE. Her actions support those who flout the law and boldly validates illegality.
California Congressman Darrell Issa coming up. Before then, let's scoop up more facts. Claudia Cowan live from Sacramento. Claudia?
Well, good morning. Once again, Harris, the Attorney General Jeff Sessions really threw down the gauntlet here this morning, saying that federal law is the supreme law of the land and equating these sanctuary policies with open borders. He spoke at a breakfast meeting with a number of California peace officers, and he blasted state politicians, saying they are deliberately obstructing federal immigration law by protecting immigrants living in the country illegally.
We're simply asking the state and other sanctuary jurisdictions to stop actively obstructing federal law enforcement. Stop treating immigration agents differently from everybody else for the purpose of eviscerating border and immigration laws. Stop protecting lawbreakers and giving all officers more dangerous work to do so that politicians can score political points on the backs of officer safety.
Now, this lawsuit marks an escalation in the ongoing feud between the Trump administration and so-called sanctuary cities and immigration advocates, hundreds of whom showed up to protest this morning, chanting "shut it down" and blocking the street around the hotel where the Attorney General delivered his remarks. California's Attorney General and Governor are holding their own press conference right now over at the state capitol. Attorney General Javier Becerra blasting the Trump administration for failing to fix immigration laws. Listen.
You can trace all of this back to the fact that Washington, D.C., as the governor just mentioned, the Trump administration has just failed utterly to help us fix a very broken immigration system. And this is what it comes down to, these types of actions that take us nowhere in advancing both good immigration policy and protecting states and the people in our states to make sure that we're doing the job of public safety and advancing the general welfare of all of our people in the United States of America.
But the DOJ's lawsuit contends that 3 newly enacted state laws violate the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution because they prohibit federal immigration officials from doing their job. And now, Harris, we see both sides digging in here for a long legal fight. Back to you.
Claudia, thank you very much. For more on this, let's bring in my first guest, Republican Congressman Darrell Issa of California, a member of the House Judiciary Oversight and Foreign Affairs Committees, a very busy man. Thanks for joining us. So why do this, the DOJ? A good move?
It's a great move. Ultimately, our federal officers have an obligation to defend our country from their enemies, both foreign and domestic. And MS-13 is both foreign and domestic. These are non-Americans operating gangs in our cities. And when federal immigration authorities ask for law enforcement to cooperate in identifying and deporting these people, they're being obstructed. When you look at the overreach of AB 450, it's pretty amazing because it actually says to private companies, don't cooperate with the federal government. How could you imagine, even for a moment, any state, any of our 13 original states saying don't cooperate with the federal government? That would have been so different than our founders' belief that that which was given to the federal government, you expected to cooperate in that process.
Well, that would tear apart the states from being yoked to the federal government. I mean, you know, when you look at the Civil War and what it was about, the way I understand it, it was about the federal government saying this and states saying yes to that. And when you separate those two things, and of course back then it was about freedom, today it's about keeping us all safe in immigration.
Well, one of the interesting things that when I listen to my attorney general at the state level and my governor is they would have you believe that it's failed immigration policy that causes us to want to find criminal aliens and deport them. It's our failed policy that would want us to do it. But the reality is, no matter what we did in Washington in the way of immigration reform, we could give amnesty to everybody. And the next day, you'd still have the same problem, which is you'd have foreign nationals committing crimes and under these laws being obstructed from the cooperation, particularly with law enforcement, to help identify and take these people out of our society. This is making my state less safe, and shame on my governor, shame on my attorney general. And by the way, represented by Eric Holder, the only attorney general held in contempt, shame on Eric Holder for advising them that these laws are constitutional.
I want to stay with where you just were, because those words are resonating. How does this endanger the citizens of the United States?
The greatest part of cooperation that they're prohibiting are the sheriffs in the jails when they identify a likely non-citizen illegal alien who has committed a crime, notifying ICE so they can take them and deport them before they're back on the street. And most of the cases that the Attorney General has provided for public use are specifically cases exactly that. A criminal, not just an illegal immigrant, but a criminal who was allowed to go back on the streets and then committed crimes again. And it happens again and again. It's not anecdotal. It happens every day.
You know, Congressman Issa, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you in particular on the program today, I mean, you're in California. You've got constituents, I would imagine, on different sides of this issue. What does this mean for voters?
Well, I think for voters, what they have to decide is, do we want to have immigration enforcement and law enforcement? And oh, by the way, a separate question, one that I'm very passionate about, is, do we want to fix portions of the broken immigration system? But, you know, my attorney general would have you believe that the fix is easy when, in fact, they obstruct the very fix that the president has proposed. The president has proposed going from if you will, a family reunification, endlessly chain migration system to a merit system, and in that process, dealing with DACA and the other, if you will, sins of the past. The president has been far more forward-leaning on being willing to take care of the problems created by past administrations in return for going to a national system that makes sense and having enforcement. And every step of the way, my state and my leadership in my state, including the members of the majority in the Assembly and the Senate, have blocked it. And that's the challenge, is you cannot have a state saying our state is supreme and we will do what we want to do. And if they can do it on immigration, maybe they do it on everything else that they don't agree with.
Yeah, a slippery slope, but this one happens to have implications for national security. I know you've got a scoop. Before that, though, Mayor Libby Schaaf, Democrat, Oakland, California, walked out and did something recently that, I mean, in my lifetime I haven't seen. I'm wondering how you deal with a mayor who gives the call to the illegals, hey, oh, by the way, they're coming to get you. How do you deal with that? And does this help in that process?
Well, candidly, I believe there's a criminal element to that. The obstruction of the police by an action is something that I think the federal government should look at seriously. But, this kind of pandering to immigrant groups, both legal and illegal, is part of the problem. The reality is that legal immigrants are the ones being victimized exactly being victimized by these laws. If you're a legal immigrant, you find yourself living, and even illegal, you're still being victimized by the gangs that are not being taken off the streets in California as a result of these laws. So the Attorney General, the President, had absolutely no choice on behalf of the American people to make them safe. And Harris, if I can just close with one thing. Remember, when California thwarts the law, those criminals don't all stay in California. They'll go to adjacent states. So their sanctuary in California allows them to make people in other states at risk. And again, the federal government is supposed to protect all the people, both in a state that doesn't agree and in a state right next door that wants enforcement.
I'm writing that down. The criminals, I mean, they don't really care what we do. They're criminals. They're going to roam.
Criminals.
Darrell Issa of California, Congressman, thank you for your time. You set us up perfectly, because I'm now going to cue the judge, who I know you know, Darrell Issa. So
yeah,
he says hello.